And we're joined by Tiffany Bond, the independent in the 2nd District race for Congress. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go ahead and start with something about you. What is it that made you want to run for the 2nd District?
You know, there were a whole bunch of people jumping into the race, and I thought I would really like somebody who feels like me running, somebody who wants the law read, and I happen to have that skill, someone who knows what it's like to have to juggle dinner and kids and you know, paying taxes the way that they're written. And that wasn't there. There wasn't somebody there who both knew what it felt like to be on the receiving end of the law and knew what it was like to create the law and to implement the law. And I think that those two pieces are really important, and we don't have that right now.
Let's go ahead and jump into some of the issues here. A lot of discussion in Washington right now about the issue of gun control versus gun rights in the Second Amendment. Where do you fall down on the issue of gun rights versus gun control?
Sure. So I'm generally pro Second Amendment. I love that right that we have. That being said, I work in family law, I work in domestic violence, and I did take the Moms Demand Action gun consent candidate designation. I did that because I wanted to signal to everybody that I'm open to a conversation. I think it's relevant and appropriate to say, hey, you know, there's some people that maybe shouldn't have guns, people who have committed domestic violence. My father committed suicide with a gun, and I think that I would really like for my kids to have a grandfather that they don't have, that maybe if we had some red flag laws or if we had some appropriate legislation, they'd have a grandpa today. And there's some weapons that we maybe shouldn't have in public, so I think that we should be having a very good conversation about that and bringing in all the stakeholders. I don't want to just talk to people that want controls on guns. I want to talk to people that hunt. I want to talk to people that use guns recreationally. I want really very productive conversations to happen, and I also want to work with the laws that we have and get those to work together, because right now they're not talking either.
How about the opioid crisis? This is probably something you've come across in your family law practice as well, a big crisis in Maine and elsewhere as well. What's something you would do to address the opioid crisis at the federal level? So
we have to be really conscious of what the federal government actually does. The federal government has 3 basic mechanisms to help. There is tax benefits, so the carrot, there are taxes, which is the stick, and there's prohibitions. There's a lot of limitations with what can be done at the federal level to address the opioid crisis. That's really going to be something that your local candidates, gubernatorial, state legislature are going to deal with. But what Congress can really do is they can push funds towards it, and they can also work with the ACA to see where we can move coverage and where we can move resources to have people have access to treatment. A lot of it will be locally driven, but certainly we should be looking to get those partnerships together. And I look forward to working with whoever is governor. You know, that's a really important job, and I think that the federal delegation needs to have a lot to do with the state.
How about recreational marijuana? Maine is one of those states where the voters have approved it, and yet there are other states that are obviously doing that as well. And yet there's been a discussion that there's sort of a patchwork at the federal level, that there should be maybe at least guidance at the federal level. What's your position on that?
So I don't indulge. I grew up on the West Coast, so I know an awful lot of people who do. But I really do think that that should be federally scheduled, and for a couple of reasons. I think that's a state sovereignty issue. We should have the right to decide if we want to engage in activities related to marijuana, but it's also an economic issue. It's not just recreational tourism, which I think it's great for. I was a city official on the West Coast for a town that did agricultural tourism, and it was fantastic. It was a great way to really bolster a community of 10,000. We love it. It's still a thriving community today. And I think there's also some research and development opportunities that are really being underlooked. I think we could draw some high income research, science, educational opportunities to this state if we went ahead and got that descheduled on a federal level. Now, again, that's something the state legislature is going to have to address. They're going to have to work with maybe the humane system and see, hey, how do we put these partnerships together so we can really grow the R&D? But I think there's some great opportunities there.
How about the issue of tariffs? Certainly a lot of discussions about that as well right now. How do you think that those are going to play out? Do you think that they are ultimately hurting or harming or helping the economy here in the country and in Maine?
I don't like to get rid of any tool that's a possibility, and tariffs are a tool. I do think they're a dated tool, and they're a tool that should be used very sparingly, and I think they generally tend to hurt industries when they are used. There may be times and places to use them, so I think it's great to keep them on the books, but generally I would like to see us stop using tariffs.
How about border security? A lot of discussion in Washington right now has been and will continue to be about border security and immigration reform. Where do you stand on the issues of border security and immigration as part of that?
I really think border security is the wrong question. I think the question is, why haven't we touched immigration reform in a way that makes it a fair process to come here? And I think until we really deal with that underlying issue, we're going to be dealing with the symptoms and not the disease. So I think that we do need to be more humane with how we are at the border, and I've probably been the most outspoken candidate in the race about that. We shouldn't be separating families. We should be humane in how we handle immigration policy and immigration violations. But we also really need to take a look at our immigration policy. If we've got a 20-year wait to come here for somebody who really wants to work and be a part of our communities and pay taxes and be a productive member of society, that's an us problem.
And how about, to close things out, maybe a little bit of a wild card here, what's one thing that people may not know about Tiffany Bond that might surprise them or might help to inform them when they're trying to make a decision on who they're going to vote for on November 6th? What's something that you'd like them to know about you?
I really, really, really love the life here. And I hope that we elect, no matter who it is, somebody where it's painful to go to Washington, D.C. every week. I look forward to that bittersweet pain because I think it's very important to be connected to who we're making laws for. And I appreciate the sacrifice that I'm going to have to give up in my job to go there. I hope that everybody feels that same way because I think that's something every candidate should have in this race.
Tiffany Bond, an independent candidate for the 2nd District in Congress, thanks so much for being with us.